So I'd like to answer a very common digital dilemma that many parents grapple with, and that is how to manage multiple kids and multiple screens at different ages and stages. This is an issue that I know most parents battle with at some point in time. And before I answer the question, I want to share a funny meme that I've seen ironically online. And it says, my first child watched one Baby Einstein DVD every day. My second child was allowed 2 hours of Nickelodeon Junior channel every day. And my third child is currently watching The Godfather. And I think this sums up this dilemma that we face as parents. Is how do we manage screens when we've got kids of different ages and stages of development? So first and foremost, I want to reassure you that this is a common issue that parents grapple with. And I want to share just some practical strategies that might be of assistance. So my first strategy, so the question related to having multiple children, 3 children aged 7, 4 and 1. And obviously with the first child, as many of us are, we're very conscious of what technology they can access. But those rules sort of dissipate and blend and blur as more children are introduced and more screens are introduced, and demands for different screen activities are often altering as well. So the question was, what are some tips and suggestions to combat this and to ensure that children of all ages are able to access age-appropriate materials without impacting adversely on siblings? So first and foremost, if you've got multiple children, my suggestion is to find a type of media experience that they can all watch that's appropriate together. Now, I understand that is really difficult, particularly if you've got a 1-year-old versus a 7-year-old, but perhaps with the 7 and 4-year-old, there are what we call some joint media experiences that they could actually enjoy together. A really great resource to find age-appropriate material is Common Sense Media, which is a not-for-profit organisation that review all types of media, video games, television shows, websites, movies, etc. So trying to find some common ground that perhaps the closest in age, the 7 and the 4-year-old, might be able to enjoy together. My next suggestion is to provide access at different times. So perhaps could you provide access for the 7-year-old if, and I know this isn't always the case with 4-year-olds, but if your 4-year-old still happens to have a nap, or perhaps the 4-year-old goes to an after school or a sporting activity, during that time, could that be the time that the 7-year-old perhaps accesses the type of technology that you'd rather prevent the 4-year-old from accessing? So trying to look at sort of natural times in the calendar or the weekly schedule where you can provide the older children with the access that they're wanting without the younger children having to be exposed to it. The other alternative is to provide different activities for the child, the younger child, when the older child is having access that you don't want the younger child to have. I'm sorry if this sounds a little convoluted. So perhaps could you set up I know some families have boards. So literally a board with activities that kids can do when they say that they're bored. Perhaps it's a special box that you pull out. Something, again, we want some sort of novelty or special feature about it, but something that we can pull out to entertain the younger child when we've got the older child watching, playing or doing things that you don't want the younger child to access. So giving them some sort of fun alternative. The other thing that I know works very well for families is having folders or playlists. So literally curating the content that is only appropriate for your older child that your younger child shouldn't be watching. So each child has sort of their own playlist or curated feed, so that we are ensuring that they're not actually watching age inappropriate content. And my final strategy, and again, depending on your circumstances and what you think is appropriate, I know some families have actually found that providing access to different devices for different kids simultaneously can help combat this. So while the 7-year-old is doing the things that you don't want your 4-year-old to do, you provide access to the 7-year-old on their device, and the 4-year-old has access on another device. Now, I'm completely aware this is not appropriate or within possibility for some families, but if you can, and this would not be my recommendation all of the time, the research really tells us that kids benefit when they're using and watching technology with somebody else, be it a sibling, a parent or a carer. But this can combat this tricky territory in terms of navigating. My fundamental tip, and the thing that I know works best from experience, I have a 5 and an 8-year-old and soon to be a newborn, but what I do know from experience is that finding common media that they can both enjoy and play is incredibly beneficial. And as I suggested, Common Sense Media is a go-to resource. You might also find some app reviews on the Australian Council on Children and the Media. They often review age-appropriate apps as well. So where you can, trying to find age-appropriate content as an alternative if that isn't possible, setting up playlists or curating content, providing an alternative for the younger child. So when the older child is accessing things that you don't want the younger child to see, giving the younger child something fun or novel, a novelty type of activity that will keep them busy, scheduling in activities when other children are occupied. And my fifth and final strategy was to have multiple devices so that kids have their own activities to do on those specific devices. So I hope that has been helpful. Rest assured, this is a digital dilemma that many of us are grappling with, and I don't think it's going to go away. Thank you.